So the Sony FX6 Mark I is a 90% perfect camera, but there's just that 10% where I'm just like, why Sony? Why? There's that 10% that can make this camera a 100% perfect camera. But when in doubt, these are my wish list that I wish for in an FX6 Mark II. And the reason why I say a Mark II because I do believe that there will be a Mark II coming out. Now, before we get into some of the wish lists that I have for the FX6 Mark II, at the time of recording this video, Sony has just announced a new cinema camera and it's a Sony Burano. Now, basically that camera pretty much has most of the things that I'm wishing for in an FX6. But the only downside to that camera is the price point of $25,000. That is completely out of my budget, but it is cool to see that some of the things that I'm asking for in a Mark II for FX6 is on this camera. So that lets me know that they're more than able to do it for a Mark II. Wishlist number one for me is going to be an integrated V-mount system. And the reason why I really want this is because when I seen that the new Red Komodo X came out and it has that, it just makes me want it all the more. So let's just face it, with these cinema cameras, a lot of cinematographers, they're not using the batteries that come with these cinema cameras. They're using V-mount batteries. They want the longer battery life. They want the more pullability. They want that one battery that can power everything on the camera. And I'm really wishing that the Mark II would have an integrated V-mount system, because if the new Sony Burano has it, I'm pretty sure a Mark II can have it. It just makes all of our lives so much easier as cinematographers. We don't like to carry around a bunch of little MPF batteries. We want to carry just 2-3 V-mount batteries that can power everything and just get the job done. And honestly, V-mount batteries is pretty much the standard in any cinema camera. I think having an integrated V-mount system would just make things so much more easier rather than having to buy a third-party Tilta V-mount battery plate in order to hook up a V-mount battery. The V-mount plate on the FX6 Mark I just causes way too many issues that I'm going to talk about later in this video. So it would just make more sense and just be more practical to have an integrated V-mount system. Now, number two is kind of more of an opinion base, but I kind of wish that a Mark II is going to have more stops of ND. Now, hear me out first. The FX6 already comes with a good amount of ND stops, but it's just there's certain situations where I'm shooting outside where that sun is just so bright to where I wish I had more stops of ND. Now, again, to avoid that issue, I would have to screw on a filter, but I don't really like using ND filters, so I find myself never doing that. But it's just certain situations where I did wish that I had more ND. Now, obviously there is solutions and workarounds to properly expose. I can just either increase the aperture, but whenever I want to shoot at a lower aperture, if I want to have it at a 1.4, if I want to have it at a 1.2, I want to be able to know that I have enough ND that's going to allow me to be able to shoot at that aperture. And this, by all means, isn't something that, oh my gosh, if a Mark II doesn't have it, I'm not going to buy it, because this is honestly probably the least of my concerns on this whole list. But it is something that would be nice to have. Just having more ND. I'd rather have more and not use it rather than not have it and need it. But again, a lot of my jobs are indoors and they're events and corporate work and stuff along those lines. So it's not too much of a big issue, but it would be nice to have more stops of ND. Number three is something that everybody talked about for the longest, and it's going to be having XLR and 3.5 ports on the body itself. It's cool that it's on the top handle, but it would just make a lot more sense to have it on the body. A lot of people who use the FX6 don't really like the top handle. I personally don't have too much of an issue with it, but a lot of people do have an issue with it, and they don't like how the XLR is on the top handle. And that's why I think it would be perfect if the Mark II came with XLR on the body and a 3.5. Just because it's a cinema camera, it's a $6,000 camera, and people prefer XLR audio, it doesn't give an excuse not to have a 3.5. There's situations where you're most likely gonna probably want to have a 3.5, like lavaliers like this right here. Number four for me is going to be the SDI and HDMI ports. I wish that they would be in the front of the body instead of the back. Most of us, we mount our monitors towards the front of the camera. So FX6 Mark I, it has the ports on the back of the camera, so you got to run it from the back all the way to the front, and it can just make cable management kind of sloppy, and it can just make it just all over the place. So I think in a Mark II, it would make it so much more cleaner if they added it to the front, since mostly everybody mounts their monitors towards the front. It's something small, but it's something that will go a long way. And the reason why I say SDI and HDMI, for the simple fact that I know SDI is industry standard, and I know a lot of cinematographers love and prefer SDI over HDMI any day of the week, which I do agree. It's a more secure network. But the reason why I say HDMI as well is because there are some cinematographers out there like me who don't have a monitor that has SDI ports. Like I have an Atomos Shinobi monitor and it's only HDMI. Yeah, HDMI can be kind of a pain in the neck, but it's not the end of the world. The only thing that I don't like about my monitor is how the HDMI is on the side. I would prefer that it would be on the back of the monitor so it's more a secure network, but it's just perks like that that I don't have. And the reason why I think HDMI should be in the front as well as SDI is because, like I said, not everybody has a monitor that has SDI. I feel like we shouldn't have to be forced if we don't have an SDI monitor just to buy SDI monitor because they don't want to put HDMI in the front of the camera. I think to make it equal and to make it even, people like me who have HDMI monitors and who really don't find a reason to upgrade to an SDI monitor just yet, feel like they should give us that option as well as HDMI users to be able to plug in from the front and not have to run it from the back. Number 5 for me is going to be play in the side handle. Now, if any of you own an FX6, you're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. Whenever you're using the side handle on the FX6, you're gonna hear that it makes like a ka-clink sound. And this sound alone can get kind of annoying, and there is times, believe it or not, where my microphone picked up that sound whenever I was hand holding it. I think that if they can make it more secure where it's not making that sound, this would be beneficial. Again, these are just small things, but it is something that I have had an issue with sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes just the vibration of it, I don't know, it just picks it up in the audio. And it's just kind of annoying. Number 6 for me is going to be the IO ports are cramped. Now, if you don't know what the IO ports are, they're basically all the ports are in the back of the FX6, like the SDI, the HDMI, and all those ports. I found myself, whenever I'm using all of those ports, it is just way too cramped. You can't get your fingers back there. It just becomes a big clutter and becomes a big mess. I feel like on an FX6 Mark II, they should make it more spaced out and just make it more easy to use. I just hate when things are just cramped up. I just hate when things are just too tight, and it just doesn't, I don't like it. I don't like it. So I feel like the IO ports on a Mark II should be more spaced out. Give it more room. Don't have it so cramped up. Number 7 for me is going to be something that I talked about in a video that I made called Cons of Owning an FX6, and it's going to be, I wish the SD cards, I wish they popped out just a little bit more than what they do, especially when you're using V-mount batteries like I mentioned everyone uses. You can find it pretty difficult to get those SD cards out. You have to cram your fingers in there and it just becomes a big mess. So I wish on a Mark II that the SD cards, I wish they popped out just a little bit more to make it a little bit easier, especially if they don't give us an integrated V-mount system. At least make the SD cards pop out just a little bit more so we're not cramming our fingers back there trying to pull out the card. And number 8, which I think is going to be my last wish list, is going to be that I wish the FX6 Mark II comes with a 5-inch monitor. I know Sony can do it. Blackmagic did it for their Pocket 4K camera, and I don't see why they wouldn't be able to do it. Having a 5-inch monitor is pretty much industry standard. Now, I know a lot of people would prefer a 7-inch, which I would agree, bigger monitor, bigger screen, but for not everyone who wants a 7-inch monitor, I think 5-inch should at least be the basic. Let's just face it, no one really uses the monitor that comes with the Sony FX6. It's just too small, it's not bright enough, it's just, no one likes it. I use it, but I don't use it at the same time. I pretty much only use it just so I can have touch to focus, but besides that, the autofocus works flawlessly, so I find myself hardly ever even using it. Number 9 is going to be in-body stabilization. I wanted it, but then I kind of didn't know how it would go with having internal NDs as well. But after seeing the new Sony Burano, how they have in-body stabilization and built-in ND filters, I know if they did it for that camera, they can definitely do it for an FX6 Mark II. It would be nice to have in-body stabilization with it. And number 10, I hope they keep it relatively affordable. I know for most people, $6,000 is not really affordable. I know it's a big chunk of change, but I hope with the Mark II, they don't make it 15 grand, they don't make it 12 grand, they don't make it anything along those lines. I hope they do keep it relatively affordable. I know it might be kind of difficult for what we're all asking for, but if they can keep it pretty affordable, then I think it would be a great option. And either way, if they pretty much add everything that I'm saying in this video and what other people are saying, I think either way it's still going to be a great option. But I really do hope that they do keep it relatively affordable for everybody who's in the price range of around $6,000 can afford. But without further ado, that's pretty much it for today's video. Those are some things that I hope to see in an FX6 Mark II. Leave in the comment section below, what do you wish to have in an FX6 Mark II, and let me know your opinion on the new Sony Burano. Do you think it's a great camera? Do you think it's something that you would purchase? I personally think $25,000 is great for people who own Sony Venices, who own those type of cinema cameras. But I think for me, the biggest thing is $25K and also the really bad crop factor that it has. Especially shooting in 4K, the crop is just tremendous, and that's not something that I'm really wanting, nor am I even ready for the 8K workflow. But without further ado, let me know what you guys think. I'm gonna see you in the next video. I'll be on to Bonjoni.